Hey, it's Christopher, and welcome back to Watching, Winning, and Wrecking. Here we are, the off season. No shortage of news still, and good opening there. As you can see, it's a few weeks away from the holiday season, Christmas time. If you're a Christian and you celebrate that, and that's your thing, that's what you like. I like the bright lights. I like the decor. Not a big fan of the snow and the cold, but circle of life, man. It's just the web we weave, right? And I take the good with the bad. So all the, beach bum at heart. So I like to wear shorts and t-shirt, be pretty casual throughout most of the year, and then, fortunately, it's December and got to break up the Canada Goose and gloves and the boots, and you all know all the rest. Interesting fact about that song, Boney M. I know it's a big Christmas favorite of most people that dig Christmas albums or dig Christmas music. That was a song written by Jester Forbes of Amen fame. I don't know if you remember that old sitcom from 1980s, starring Sherman Hemsley. Amen. What was his name? Was it Deacon Fry, or was it Deacon Fry? And he had Clifton Davis, who also was a songwriter. So you had two songwriters on that show. He wrote Jackson 5, Never Can Say Goodbye. Oh, 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 I never can say goodbye. If you might remember that song from the Jackson 5. Big hit. He wrote that song, Clifton Davis, who played Reuben Gregory, and then you had Sherman Hemsley was very famous as George Jefferson years before, and All in the Family, the Jeffersons. And we're moving on up. That's enough of singing for now, and let's get to this episode, what we're here to talk about today. Kurt Busch, 10 years ago, gets the pink slip, gets future endeavored by Team Penske, then known as Penske Racing, do a deep dive into the events that transpired and the outcome. I thought it was a great thing for Penske and Kurt Busch to move in a different direction at that point. So I'm going to recap some of the news events that centered on that. So that was 10 years ago on Sunday. If you're listening to this, recording this on Thursday the 9th, 10th anniversary. The time flies. Was this past Sunday, December 5th. But let's get to a couple news and notes in 2021 NASCAR, going into 2022. As you might know by now, Richard Petty Motorsports, known as RPM, has sold a majority interest to GMS, Murray Gallagher's team. GMS paid, this is reported, many sources, Medallion Financial, $19 million for controlling interest in RPM. And the two charters are included in the agreement. The 43 will continue to operate with Eric Jones as the driver, with in his second season. And this team will use the 42 car. Was going to be billed as the 94, but will be the 42 as a part of this merger. For Ty Dillon, so it's a two-car operation. Richard Petty, again, somewhat the figurehead. A lot of people say, we're worried about Richard Petty was going to disappear from the sport. You wouldn't see him at the track anymore. He's kind of been the silent partner or the figurehead for the incarnations of this team. Petty Enterprises went away in 2008. This team, which was RPM, operating as RPM, was essentially Ray Evernham. Remember Evernham Motorsports, and then the whole George Gillette fiasco became Gillette Evernham. And then they sold to Andrew Merstein, New York businessman, Medallion Financial, was an investor, bought into created Richard Petty Motorsports, and now merges with GMS. So this is a team that's just gone through so many incarnations, but that's what's going to happen. Two-car operation, I think it's good. I mean, it helps both entities. I know Richard Petty Motorsports has felt like it's been for sale for forever. Been rumored to have been for sale for a number of years. Team operated from 2009 to 2021. 900 starts in the Cup Series, 5 wins, 46 top 5s, 143 top 10s. The last win came in July of 2014, the Coke 0400. Eric Almirola was the winner on that day. And this has a single car operation since 2017. And last season, this is the first time this team did not record a top 5 finish. So that's just been the story of Richard Petty Motorsports. It's been hard to compete in the landscape that is so competitive in today's Cup Series. It keeps, again, a legendary figure in the sport, but I just feel like it's come and gone for Richard Petty. I can't really see this ever, even though it was built RPM, Richard Petty Motorsports. This has never really been a Richard Petty team. It's several investors. It's gone through so many incarnations that you can't even really call this a Richard Petty team. But again, he's the figurehead. And I just want to go back to the NASCAR report. We'll do that. I actually have a Focus Factor was signed on as a long-term sponsor. So that's where you saw that was reported a few weeks back. This is where you've seen that this team was going to be going through some kind of changes again. As again, they've had offshoot sponsorships throughout the years. The U.S. Army, SCP would be on the car. They had Tide, Armor All. So just variety of sponsors you would see on the car. Smithfield Foods when Eric Almirola was there. Let's see here if that is even here at all. The NASCAR report, if it did report this merger, if you will. Here we are. The GMS Petty merger back on December 1st just was reported. So let's see what people will be saying for this. Nick says they should call it P&S Racing. As Jim Ross would say, not funny. I think that's just kind of lame. So Nick, correct. Richardson 88 thinks it's funny. He says yes, and he's got the laughing face emoji. And then we have a person named here, Vishoff. RPM closed, and he's got a question mark. And then responding to him is Django 247365. I guess he's unchained. We'll get to that in a minute, but we have NASCAR Rich _9. No, they are getting better. And then we have Michael Kirchner, 1979, says, how are they getting better? RCR equipment sucks. And then we have Michael Kirchner says, only one RCR car runs good weekly. And then we have Django, who we were talking about earlier, that drives. I guess he referred to Tyler Reddick, who had a good year. Jacob Iveson, and we've heard about him on this podcast before on the NASCAR report. So in other words, you haven't watched in years. Got it. And then we have RY Wag 98 says to Jacob, he's right. I mean, they've improved last year, but they're still behind Hendrick and Gibbs. They did better than Stuart Haas Racing last year. I'll give them that. And then Bryson Hunter 95. Things I didn't expect for 1,000. Alex, are we trying to be funny here? And then Michael Zibley says, well, that's a start for RPM. Maybe just now they will be competitive. And then you have here the replies. GL Blog says to Michael, my guess is they won't be called RPM anymore. And then Michael back to GL Blog. Probably not, but at least they will be competitive. Okay, so at least they'll be competitive. Again, they struggled last year. Bubba Wallace did a pretty good job in the car when he was there. Eric Jones, I thought, they were hitting on something. I was really depressed when the top 5 streak ended. You heard me talk on this pod a lot about that streak. And then how in jeopardy it was. I knew it was gonna end, right? But I tried to be optimistic. Got to be the eternal optimist. I like what they have. They have a good young lineup. I just don't know. I think this is the blind leading the blind, so to speak. You have a team that has reached a lot of heights, a lot of success in the Truck Series, going in the Cup with a driver who has had little success in Cup and Ty Dillon. And then now you get that little oomph, which I think is that little oomph from Richard Petty Motorsports, but a team that also has struggled mildly through the years. I don't know what this is going to look like. I think they may have an opportunity to run at middle of the pack, maybe try to get one of those cars in the playoffs, but I don't get this this competitive. I don't think this team is competitive or is going to be at all competitive. So Michael Hollett 2000 says to Michael Zibley, Yeah, my first thought was like RPM is shutting down and sold everything to GMS, and so that would put Eric Jones without a ride. Um, no, I don't think that was never the issue, right? It's just, I don't know. And so people, I'm just gonna stop because I think people just don't get it when they write here in the NASCAR report. We're going to read some more about the news here in a minute, but so I guess we'll see what happens with Richard Petty Motorsports GMS. See what kind of magic they can conjure up between the two entities. Front Row Motorsports also released their lineup for 2022 last week, announced that 2021 Daytona 500 winner Michael McDowell returns for his 5th season at Front Row Motorsports. Coming off a career year for him, 16th in the standings, made the playoffs for the first time in his career. For the career year for the Arizona native, first ever playoff appearance, as we said, and now we'll have an opportunity to make good on that for another year, possibly win the Daytona 500 back-to-back years. I think that hasn't been done since 99, 2000, Dale Jarrett. Todd Gilliland will also drive the Revolving Door, which is the 38 car. Son of former front row driver David Gilliland, who drove for the team from 2010 to 2015. If you watch NASCAR at all, have paid attention in the last 20 years, you already know that, but thought I'd fill in the blanks if you're a new NASCAR fan or haven't been paying attention all this time. Todd grew up really with the team. He was a young child when David was with Front Row Motorsports. Drove for the Truck Series effort for the team for the last 2 seasons, winning one race at the Circuit of Americas. This year had a really strong year for the Truck Series with Front Row. Gilliland is a 2-time K&N Pro West champion, 2016, 2017, and 2 truck wins. And one of those truck wins, as we know, was for Kyle Busch Motorsports at Martinsville in the fall of 2019. A lot of people criticized this decision. He's not ready. He has never turned a lap in the Xfinity Series. He's going to be up against Austin Cindric, Harrison Burton, 2 other drivers, another second-generation driver in Harrison Burton, and the driver that I think is the clear-cut favorite for the Rookie of the Year in Austin Cindric. However, Gilliland, I don't think this is a bad move. And a lot of people will say, well, they didn't learn the lesson with John Hunter Nemechek. They didn't learn their lesson with Anthony Alfredo last year. I'm going to pause for a minute, and I might surprise some of you what I'm about to say, but I think Todd Gilliland has just a little more chops, a little more meat on the bone in this ride, and he's going to get the most out of it in his career than at John Hunter Nemechek. And he did a great job. He almost won the Talladega race when he was in the car, John Hunter Nemechek, the spring race back in 2020, was it? Yes, 2020. Not saying Hunter Nemechek is worse off or better off than Gilliland. I think this is a good move because the fact is Gilliland's been in the system. He's already run 2 years in the truck. Is an incredible talent, has won championships at a very young age, has that it factor that a lot of folks look for. I think Front Row capitalized on that. They didn't let him get away, possibly to another team if they were looking for a driver. I think it's a great move. I'm concerned that his star might burn out because you're not... Front Row still, even though they've won the Daytona 500, made the playoffs on 2 occasions and have continued to be the little team that could. I can't see this team being up front every week in the top 10, top 15, but if they can get inside the top 20, build on that momentum, even go through a manufacturer change somewhere down the line, but they've been with Ford forever, right? But what I like about this is this next-gen car, which you hear so much about, put this a competitive... There's a lot of parity. It's going to put a competitive advantage for teams like a Front Row to run up front, to have a better opportunity. And I think Todd Gilliland has got a lot of talent. I think a lot more. I think on par with the John Hunter Nemechek, but a little bit more than Anthony Alfredo. And again, it's no disrespect to him, but again, he was asked, he had a tall task in front of him. He was asked to do something that was astronomical and make this team a good team when he had no experience. He ran his first ever full slate of races in any three of the major touring series. So a good year for Alfredo. I thought it was respectable, but I think this team is going to up its game. with Todd Gilliland at the wheel. I'm in favor of this move. I think it's risque, but I like it. I think you got to go for it. No risk it, no biscuit, right? Zane Smith will assume the duties of the Truck Series team for the front row. They'll continue with their efforts. 3 career wins, both for GMS for Zane Smith, and coming off 2 consecutive runner-up finishes in the standings, and can really build on the success that Gilliland had with this front row team. I think this is a wise choice. I know Zane Smith was left without a ride. Most people will be surprised, well, why would GMS let him go? The plan is the cat was out of the bag. Zane Smith opened up about his future, that he was in line to drive for Chip Ganassi Racing, which I thought would have been a disaster had they survived and not sold their assets to Trackhouse. Putting a very inexperienced driver in a car where this team was really trying to find itself, past glory gone, and here you are trying to make something out of nothing. Kurt Busch was probably going to leave. It would have been Ross Chastain and Zane Smith. So, and Ganassi's has had a history of promoting drivers to this level, and essentially the careers didn't go anywhere after that. Reed Sorensen comes to mind, David Stremme. So I guess this was in the best interest for Zane Smith to remain in the Truck Series. Hopefully he can find that same success he did with GMS at front row. But could he have been a good fit for Trackhouse too? I'm not sure. But I guess that we'll never know the answer, right? But good signings here. I think it's this front row motorsports continues to thrive in the face of adversity. I have to give major props to Bob Jenkins and his crew for continuing to battle year after year when, it is a David versus Goliath. And I think that's what people have noticed about front row, and why I think they have a lot of respect of the competition. They continue to do this. And 2013, everyone knows the story. The 2 Davids slaughtered Goliath that day in that race, and David Reagan took home the checker flag. Best news of the week, I think so, and I'm really happy about this because I am a huge supporter of Landon Cassill, huge fan of his work. Landon Cassill will join Kaulig Racing to complete the team's driver lineup. That includes AJ Allmendinger and Daniel Hemrick. So a lot of redemption story here. We all know what Kaulig did for the careers of Justin Haley. He's off to the Cup Series with Kaulig. It got Jeb Burton to the winner's circle last year. Unfortunately, Jeb is a victim here because he didn't have the sponsorship to continue with the team. Had he had the sponsorship, I think he'd still be here, but one man's loss is another man's gain. In this case, Landon Cassill has an opportunity to shine here and be competitive in the Xfinity Series. And he's young. He's 31 years old. I think we often forget that Landon Cassill's been around for well over a decade in NASCAR, in the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series. That how young is he? There's so much untapped potential left in Landon Cassill. Cassill was a one-time prospect for Hendrick Motorsports, as you might know, and I think he'll seize this opportunity to succeed in the Xfinity Series, be in thick of the title fight. 176 Cups, career starts, not Cup starts. He's got those too. We'll get to that in a minute. In the Xfinity Series 2007 to 2021. His best finish was 3rd for James Finch at Daytona in February of 2011. He's also driven for Johnny Davis, Junior Motorsports, and Morgan Shepherd. So I like the story again, not just because I'm a huge Landon Cassill fan, but here he was helping a guy like Morgan Shepherd out who, and you all know the story of Morgan Shepherd. I'm not going to go too granular on it, but knowing that the team wasn't that competitive, bided his time, helped him out, continued to keep his name in the sport, could have easily just retired, faded off in the sunset, but chose to take opportunities with underfunded teams like Morgan Shepherd's team, like Johnny Davis, and have the best opportunity to put himself in a position, maybe to sneak one in, get a win, but just to get that seat time, turn those laps. Really commendable. 326 Cup starts from 2010 to 2021. He's driven for folks like Joe Falk. Remember, I think it might have been circa 2014, Fontana, the Auto Club Speedway. About a lap or two to go. Cassill stays out, tries to pull the upset. Got swallowed up by Kyle Busch pretty quickly, who went on to win the race. But again, have to admire the tenacity. Go for that and have an opportunity. I think that might have been 2013, I think. No, it was 14, because in 15, Auto Club was Brad Keselowski won that race. James Finch he's driven for as well. The Racers Group, Front Row Motorsports, Larry Gunzelman. The recently departed Starcom, and last year 2 starts for the Gent Brothers, Talladega and Daytona. And in 2000, I think what really cost Landon Cassill why he never moved out with Hendrick Motorsports was, again, Hendrick had so much talent, didn't know what to do with it. 2007, look who's on his Cup roster: Johnson, Gordon, Mears, Kyle Busch. Then you got Dale Jr., Mark Martin a few years later. So there was simply no place for Landon Cassill to move up with Hendrick Motorsports, and he was a top prospect. And I think, again, good things come to those who wait. And then if you think all is lost, sometime never lose hope, because there's just that little glimmer. Someone like of hope. Someone like a Matt Kaulig could come and save the day, and essentially that's what he's done for Landon Cassill. Landon Cassill is, I'm just over the moon about this. I can't say enough about how really pleased I am that he's going to get this opportunity to run for Kaulig. And you see what Kaulig's done for the careers of A.J. Allmendinger. He brought him back to relevance. What a success story. Now has Daniel Hemrick on the fold. Daniel Hemrick is coming off a championship. I can see really good things here. I don't want to be premature, but I'm really looking forward to seeing Landon Cassill with Kaulig. I'm going to read some of the comments here from NASCAR Report, and you have NASCAR Time. He's kind of giving the shocked emoji, which is kind of ridiculous. Tyler Truex, one for the good guys, and he's got the high five emoji. Riley20 says, woo! His first time in decent, better than shit equipment. I couldn't agree more. And NASCAR fan 489 to Jacob King, which I think, let's read what he had to say first. Jacob King says, Hendrick, but I'm happy for him, definitely. And then NASCAR fan, he never raced for Hendrick, did he? And then Riley20, like 06, he was with Hendrick for the Nationwide Series, but was never, but that was extremely brief. Easy for me to say. Lucas831 says he was 18 at the time and was really inexperienced, so this is his biggest shot in good equipment in 13 years. And then Jacob King 1204 literally was a developmental driver. NASCAR fan back to Jacob King. He raced for Junior Motorsports, not Hendrick. Laughed my ass off. Well, he did race for Hendrick. Junior Motorsports. NASCAR fan, if you're a real NASCAR fan, would know that is basically a Hendrick Motorsports Xfinity team, nationwide team, without it actually saying Hendrick Motorsports on the ownership card. So I don't think you're that big of a NASCAR fan. And then we have Riley. Yes, he did. 2006, 2007, Junior Motorsports was the year after. And then Jacob King says, shut the fuck up, you lifeless clown. I don't know who he is talking to here. He drove 24 for Hendrick in 2007 in the Xfinity Series. Finishes of 32nd, 30, 22, 34. Hendrick had an Xfinity program once too. So I guess he's upset with NASCAR fan. And then NASCAR fan retorts back to NASCAR, to Jacob King. The only L is your facial hair. Very Pedro looking. So, well, okay, a NASCAR fan is a hack, as Denny Hamlin would like to say. Speaking of that hack, ever see, if you live in Ottawa, the Dr. Vera Etches? If you're familiar with her, or throw her in your Google machine. Google the internet, you'll see that mug. Wow, it looks like Denny Hamlin's long-lost twin sister. My God. Got the big chompers and all, and only a face a mother could love, but it's neither here nor there. I know, okay, NASCAR fan 489. Why would you go after Jacob King's facial hair here? Cut it out. Pedro. Jesus Christ. And then we have Jess Ella HMS09 says, I thought it was Kaz. And then you got the teary-eyed emoji. Well, it's not Kaz, so sorry. And I'm going to get to some more comments here. Then we have underfunded updates. Says, let's go. !_8. Yep, today is going to be a good day. I agree. J Vegas 72. Hell yeah, awesome opportunity for Landon. And then we have Fat Willie. It's not to be confused with Skinny Willie. If you look up his picture and his profile, he's a bit of a chunker. He's a large individual, Mr. Willie here. Yeah, that's what it's all about. And he's got everything in caps. Okay, so that's what it's all about, right? We're going to do the hokey pokey and turn yourself around, right, fat boy? And we have what a specimen we got here next, and a handsome man. Hey, it's Christopher. Oh my, love this. This is what Landon has so much talent. He will shine with Kaulig. Enough said about that. What a handsome bastard. William 24 Byron fan, 2022 Xfinity champ right here. He's got the big eyeballs. So I'll put an end to this now that NASCAR report. Some love for Landon Cassill. So no other than Mr. NASCAR fan who likes to throw stones at folks for their facial hair. Why would you care? Seems to be very happy with this selection by Kaulig Motorsports. But let's get to why we're really here. The meat and potatoes of this episode. Kurt Busch gets fired from Penske back in 2011. So to go back, you all know Kyle Busch, right? History, tantrums, explosive behavior, tirades over the radio, berating his crew. Once upon a time, Kurt Busch was like that. Like I said, apple doesn't fall far from the tree. It goes back to 2005, the Phoenix Raceway. Toward the end of the year, he gets a DUI. Busch in 2005. His season ended 2 races short after a confrontation during the fall race weekend with Maricopa County Sheriff deputies on November 11, 2005. Maricopa County, very famous county. You're big fans of true crime. Jody Arias, or the slaying of Travis Alexander. Maricopa County Sheriffs. I think maybe Juan Martinez would have been on the case here. The decorated prosecutor. What else? Juan Martinez was also one of those shows, if you're familiar with them. I think he was on Forensic Files, another episode. A lot of crime, I guess, in Maricopa County. But Jody Arias, Wairika, California zone made that place pretty damn famous in 2008. When he was pulled over for suspicion of drunk driving and cited for reckless driving, and he was suspended by Roush Racing at the time, which was known as, now it's Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing. Final 2 races of the 2005 season, replaced by Kenny Wallace, of all people, for the final 2 races in the 97 Irwin Tool Sharpie car. And if you're a fan of the NASCAR Horny Police, you saw a little more of Kenny Wallace's wife this week than you care to. Yikes. Ugh, my God. But I guess power to her. She's got a lot of courage and ambition if you want to, leave it all hang out and for all to see on Instagram and probably Twitter and Facebook, all those other social media platforms. So he was 8th in the standings, 1 year removed from his title victory at Roush. And both Busch brothers can be accused of this. They're their own worst enemies. Kurt had a lot of talent, so does Kyle. But some of the things they've done on the track are absolutely questionable and really detrimental to stock car racing in general. Midway through 2005 season, Busch announced that he was leaving Roush Racing and would replace Rusty Wallace in the Penske Blue Deuce in 2006. Roush was initially unhappy with Busch's decision to leave. Roush initially refused to let Kurt out of his contract. I think he still had a year or two on the contract. But when Jamie McMurray announced he wanted to go to Roush, Ganassi felt the right thing to do, and with Ganassi and Felix Sabates released him. Jack Roush scooped him up, and that's a partnership that didn't quite work out. On paper, it looked good. Jimmy McMurray had a lot going for him with Ganassi. That upset win in relief of Sterling Marling in Charlotte, fall of 2002. Never quite worked out. I know he got a couple wins in that car, but it never worked out for him and Roush. But anyway, he scooped him up. But that paved the way for Busch to join Penske in 2006. Busch spent 6 years at Penske. Mixed results. His best point finish was 4th in 2009. That year he had 2 wins, 10 top 5s, 21 top 10s. Was in the title fight down the stretch as well. Did not get the win there. But overall with Penske and his statistics, they're not great. They're not horrible, but I still think... And that's why I think when these two parties parted company, wasn't a bad thing. He only had 10 wins, 45 top 5s, 90 top 10s. And in July of 2010, Penske re-signed Busch through 2014. So they had a long-term plan to keep this going. And we'll get to a vital point in this story later on. But 2011 season, Pennzoil Shell signs on as a sponsor, leaving RCR, which was sponsoring Kevin Harvick at that time in the 29 car. So the 2011 season, it was just a clusterfuck, a shit show. It all went downhill for Kurt Busch. The spring race at Richmond, Busch peppered his team radio with criticism of Team Penske official Tom Germain, leading team owner Roger Penske to jump on the radio and tell Busch that he was in charge, not Busch. So Busch, and that's something he carried with when he went to Phoenix. So he promised James Finch, he would ease up on the language and wouldn't do anything detrimental to the team or to risk the team's. You didn't want to make him look like a complete fucking fool for hiring his sorry ass at the time. But I can remember him screaming over the radio, "I hate my fucking job. Jesus fucking Christ." Excessive language over the radio. And it could have been a lot worse for Kurt. Could have easily just faded into sunset, been another guy who had that opportunity. But again, there's a redemption story through all of this. We'll get to that shortly. But September 11, 2011, Richmond is the final race before the chase. Kurt and Jimmy Johnson get into it on the track. Busch goes after a reporter. He's restrained by his crew. And it started with a simple question to Busch from NASCAR.com reporter Joe Menzer following the 2 on-camera interviews by ESPN, MRN, on pit road at Richmond. Menzer said to Kurt, can either of you, so in this case, Jimmy Johnson, win the chase? Before Menzer could finish his thought, Busch cut him off, and this is what Busch had to say to him. How do I see you? We're going to come with me. We're going to come with that. How did I see you? We're going to come with that. Going to come with that. We're good, Busch said in an attempt to end the interview briefly. Make that a really brief interview. It escalated. That wasn't the end. Busch turned away and started walking down pit road. Menzer called after him and said the question was legitimate following the multiple incidents with Johnson during Saturday's race. At that moment, Busch turned around yelling explicit language at Menzer, coming at him as if he wanted to fight. Okay, so the media, in any sport, and you see the tabloids, even like TMZ, U.S. Weekly, People Magazine, The Inquirer, all that junk you see in the checkout aisle when you're going to shop your grocery, or you're at Walmart, or wherever you might be. A lot of people, and even in wrestling, if you're a wrestling fan, Dave Meltzer, the Dirt Sheets, people like to make stuff out of nothing. People like juicy gossip. So was Menzer at fault here? No, he asked a simple question, I guess, and it was along the lines, could Kurt Busch and Jimmy Johnson put their differences aside and not retaliate at any point from either driver? The goal was to become a champion, which both of them did not in 2011. That distinct honor went to Tony Stewart and one of the best championship battles with Carl Edwards in the last 20 years. See, Kurt, I think where maturation's a beautiful thing for Mr. Busch is he got over these things. These weren't things that would cause him to snap. This wouldn't be the straw that broke the camel's back like it once was for Kurt. Kurt, I think, we don't know what people go through in his life. I believe there was Amanda looked into this. She was going to do her research. She was going to be actually on this episode, but we'll miss her. The amazing Amanda will be on future episodes of this podcast. It's just, again, you got 2 children and our regular daily day-to-day lives. It's hard to sit down and commit to do this podcast and write these notes. So I'm glad you're here if you're listening, and I'm glad to do this. But I think what's difficult for Kurt was this can be all taken away. And this is a life lesson for anyone. You can have it all. And I mean, this is a life lesson, honestly, that is age-old, really. But with a blink of an eye, snap of the fingers, whatever proverb you want to use, this can all be gone. Kurt Busch isn't the greatest driver to ever suit up and race in the Cup Series. So he's expendable. It's not a big deal if Kurt Busch isn't driving your car. But I think in this case, we saw the maturation of Kurt. And I think that's why he is one of the most revered and liked drivers on the Cup Series this year. This, not just season, but I think in the last 3 to 4 years. As he called Menzer names and continued to try to get him, team members from Busch's Penske team, had to physically restrain him. So again, why would you want to... so much to lose and so much to risk over a simple question that probably has no merit or no bearing on your season, or even you'll forget about it tomorrow. I guess, again, he's going to use that, the passion, the heat of the moment. The fact is that when you're a competitor, you're so juiced up, you're so jacked up that you can't even see the forest for the trees. So for him to come at this guy, I think it's just in poor taste, and it wasn't accomplish anything. Busch had issues on pit road with a reporter and had renewed a heated discussion with him before a news conference 30 minutes later in the media center. He then challenged another reporter who asked Johnson to respond to Busch's his comments that he was in the 5-time champion's head. Busch, I didn't say that tonight. I never saw the footage, but it sounds like something like Kurt would say. And if you see from the feud with Elliott and Kevin Harvick, a lot of people like to live rent-free in people's minds, don't they? Who later tore up the transcript of the interview and handed him to the reporter. Did not, he said. September 13th, NASCAR announced it does not plan to take disciplinary action after Busch's unsavory interactions with 2 members of the media following Saturday's night race at Richmond. Kurt contacted both reporters midweek and to clear the air, and both reporters confirmed that Busch had issued an apology. So again, Kurt couldn't help himself. Less than a week later, 2011 at Loudon, the start of the championship chase, the fall race at New Hampshire, Busch's team was delayed in rolling the car to pit road until after the national anthem. During the pre-race inspection, NASCAR had issues with the rear end of Kurt Busch's housing being outside of its allowable Well, basically, the regulations, so what they would, I guess, at this point, allowable. And Jamie Little, walking with Busch, asked if she was okay with her asking a question, but Busch responded in an unsavory way again. Why the fuck do you think I would be okay? I gotta get into my car. NASCAR told me I got to get in my car. So again, when I get the fact maybe things weren't the greatest in his life at that time, things were coming undone at the surface. And again, I'm not making excuses for him, but the media tends to ask really silly things at times, or this guy's focused on a race. He has a chance to win a championship. At that point, why would anybody be okay with them asking a question? And I get it, he's focused, but maybe in defense of Jamie Little, maybe it wasn't the best time to ask him a question. Maybe that could have been reserved for later on. But in any case, that's seemingly another strike against him. Kurt Busch and Steve Addington, most speculated the two did not get along in their time at Penske. However, both have said numerous times they had any issues with the other, that it was just taken out of context. And in the 2 seasons as Busch's crew chief, they had 4 wins in 2011, 1 Sonoma, and the race in the fall at Dover. And that was Kurt's final win at Penske. And at the time of the victory, Busch was 3rd in the standings. Think about it. This team was very much in the title fight. So for things just to go completely backwards, I think that's where Kurt Busch's frustration was with Penske's reliability and the equipment. Could he be a champion in this equipment? So what looked like to be an ideal situation for Busch at one point was a complete nightmare. Only 9 points behind Kevin Harvick, the point leader at the time. The team could not capitalize and really fell off a cliff. Would not finish in the top 10 the rest of the season and would wind up 11th in the standings. The Charlotte Observer responded on October 14th, 2011, stating that Steve Addington was not expected to return to Penske in 2012. And on October 15th, Roger Penske told ESPN's Terry Blount there were no truth to the rumors that Steve Addington was leaving the organization. The team was focused on the chase and winning the championship. What a tangled web of this story, really, with Penske and Kurt. It turned out Addington did not last too much longer. We'll get to that in a bit. But as you already know, October 19th, Kurt Busch confirms for the first time that he's addressing the media that the crew chief rumors on why would we be splitting up. We've got 5 weeks to go, and we're in the championship contention. So why don't we just wait until the end? So Kurt Busch on October 19th leaves that little opening that they're focused on the next 5 weeks, but maybe Steve Addington will still leave. November 16, 2011, Kurt Busch made his 400 career start, and Busch had won at least one race every season since 2002, extending that to 10 consecutive years. As of 2001, he's at least won 2021, at least won one race a season, 18 of the 20 that he's run full-time in a Cup Series. That is mighty impressive, and I think, again, we've had all the greats, Earnhardt, Johnson, Gordon, Martin, Labonte brothers, Richard Petty, whoever. We often gloss over how great Kurt Busch really is and how good the Busch brothers. This could be the best brother duo in all of NASCAR history. I know you have the Allisons, you have the Pettys, the Labontes. The list could go on and on, but can I think of two brothers that have done so much more in this sport in such a short period of time than the Busch brothers? I think you'd be hard-pressed to dispute that claim. So our story moves on to November 22nd, 2011. Steve Addington leaves Penske. Addington finally comes clean with Kurt Busch on Monday, letting Busch know that he phoned him at 4 p.m. to inform the driver that he was indeed leaving the team to join Stewart-Haas Racing, fresh off a championship, mind you. On November 22nd, Kurt Busch's tirade at Dr. Jerry Punch during Sunday's Ford 400 at Homestead, Miami. An analyst, Jerry Punch, tried to interview Kurt after the driver was forced out of the race with transmission problems, finished 34th. What resulted was a profanity-laced tirade by Busch, who didn't want to wait until the ESPN control booth threw it to Punch. In the end, Punch decided he had enough of Busch and his antics and walked away from Busch, telling producers, never mind. Penske would issue an apology to Dr. Jerry Punch, our media partner sponsors for Kurt Busch's actions in Homestead on Sunday. Penske said these actions do not represent Penske's racing and are inconsistent with the company's standards for behavior, respect for others, and professionalism when the matter is being reviewed internally. Kurt would apologize. Unfortunately, our result in the season-ending race at Homestead on Sunday was not what we had hoped for as a team. Initially, a lot of folks thought Kurt, again, this is just another tantrum that you say you're sorry, kiss and make up, it's all over with. I was really shocked when I read on December 5th. Excuse me. Oh, my goodness. Sorry for that. December 5th, 2011, that he was released. And it looked as if it was a hit job, that Penske wanted him gone. But it was a mutual decision, as you'll see later on. But I think Penske was at the end of his rope. It was a rough year, 2011, for Penske and Kurt Busch. And then on November 25th, 2011, NASCAR would fine Kurt Busch $50,000 for his actions during November 20th Sprint Cup race at Homestead. NASCAR determined Busch violated Section 12.1 and actions detrimental to stock car racing, abusive language of the 2011 NASCAR rulebook. Who writes this shit? And who's ever seen this rulebook, right? NASCAR cited Busch's poor judgment in making obscene hand gestures when he drove his car into, like, you want to guess what hand gestures those were? Hand gestures into the garage area. Busch showed disrespect towards media members. Similar incidents earlier in the season. So, Kurt was really in no mood to talk to the media or have anything to do with the media at this time, and that's the dominoes just fell from there. Now, November 27, 2011, Shell and Pennzoil are disappointed with recent actions by Kurt Busch. The company said in a statement, his actions are in no way consistent. Again, there's that in no way consistent with the way we want our brands represented, and we have expressed our disappointment and concerns directly to Penske Racing. On December 1st, 2011, Kurt Busch said he was seeing a sports psychologist and is working with him to help with anger issues that led to a $50,000 fine by NASCAR for, again, actions that are detrimental to stock car racing, and that's with reference to the incident with Dr. Jerry Punch at Homestead in the season finale. Busch is also looking for a new crew chief that will be able to put me back in my box if I get out, said Busch. So that's an interesting line here. Again, so much is made that him and Steve Addington didn't see eye to eye, and there was no... maybe there was mutual respect, but I don't know if these two ever gelled or clicked. And of course, they're not going to say one way or the other. Kurt was a pain in the ass to deal with, and I think it would have been a nightmare for any crew chief at that time. And poor Steve Addington had worked with Kurt's younger brother Kyle prior to this, so you get a double dose of abuse from the Busch brothers. I think that would lead anyone to want to take off and head for the hills. But he said he needed somebody that respects what I've done, but also can control me in a positive way. So I'm not sure, again, that should be something that's from within. As a competitor, and had been a competitor for a long time in this series at a high level, why is it up to the crew chief to keep you in your lane? I just don't quite understand. So I think there was more to this story. I think these two did not like each other, in my personal opinion. But again, it was so much sauce so much sauce on that hamburger, so much sauce on that meat that you didn't want to make more of it. Busch believed that Steve Eddington's decision to leave Penske was more to do with an opportunity to work with Tony Stewart, and that was something that he expressed many times over that had nothing to do with his actions on the radio. And again, Tony Stewart capitalized on that. I think Steve Eddington tells the story. He sent him a text shortly after the race at Homestead, Miami, and said pretty much the ball wasn't in his court. Let him know the position was open. So the big announcement came on December 5th, 2011. Busch out at Penske was the headline. Penske officials met on Monday to determine the future of the driver of the 22 car, Kurt Busch, and the Charlotte Observer reported Sunday that Busch had been fired by Penske, and Busch was involved in several behavior incidents on the track in 2011, including that infamous season finale at Homestead. And Busch made obscene hand gestures leaving the track after his transmission failed early in the race. He was also had a profanity-laced tirade at ESPN's Dr. Jerry Punch and his camera crew in the garage moments later, which went viral on YouTube. So somebody caught that on camera, because if you look at the YouTube video, it's very shaky. The audio's shit. So some motherfucker decided to stir the drink and catch that video. Had that video not been caught, and that had not surfaced, had gone viral, as the cool kids like to say, what does Kurt Busch get fired from Penske? That's something to think about. I know you want to win a fantasy book life, but think about it for a moment. If that video never sees the light of day, does Kurt Busch finish out his contractual obligations at Penske? NASCAR penalized Busch, as we know, $50,000 for the two incidents. Penske officials and sponsors both said publicly that they were reprimanding Busch afterwards, and Shell Pennzoil expressed concerns about keeping Busch in the 22 car, and speculated and also said that they wanted a candidate. The speculation at the time, the candidates for the car were David Reagan, Brian Vickers, David Rudiman, and Sam Hornish Jr., who actually would later get to drive the 22 in 2012. Reagan's future was in doubt as UPS left as sponsor of the 6 car at Roush Fenway Racing. He was fresh off the win in July. I think it might have been the Coke Zero 400 at Daytona, and would wind up with Front Row Motorsports. Had Reagan signed with Penske, how different could his career trajectory have been? He was only 26 at the time in 2022. But what you were hearing, that if Penske did sign him, it was going to be a very low-risk, high-reward deal where it only would have been a one-year deal. I guess to see what they had in Reagan, had not really set the world on fire, despite that win at Daytona for Roush Fenway Racing. The 22 car eventually would go to AJ Allmendinger, and this seemed like this whole 22 team was snake bitten for 2 years here. Before the arrival of Joey Logano, the 22 car eventually went to AJ Allmendinger, suspended before the July Daytona race, and that ended his tenure with Penske. And Sam Hornish would finish the final 20 races of the year in the 22 car. That left the door open for the eventual driver of the current 22 car. Joey Logano gets the ride in 2013. Had it not been for this, maybe Logano's career could have looked a lot different. Here's a guy who came in with a lot of hype, was a can't-miss prospect with Joe Gibbs Racing, seen as really the next Jeff Gordon, was deemed sliced bread, and was out on his ass at Joe Gibbs Racing. And I feel like that's what happened to Daniel Suarez and Eric Jones, where what could have been happened to Joey Logano happened to them years later. But Logano lands on his feet, gets the 22 at Penske, and the rest is history. Goes on to win the Daytona 500, the 2018 championship. So had Joey Logano not had this opportunity, how different could his career have looked? So you start thinking about those things and chewing on them, it's rather interesting to see what could have happened had Kurt Busch not been fired. So many moving parts here. This is not only affected Busch and Penske, but it had a lot of impact on other drivers indirectly. So Kurt gets future endeavored by Penske. Penske Racing announced today, this was on the day, December the 5th, 2011, that Penske announced today that it has decided to reached a mutual agreement to end its driver-team relationship effective immediately. The 22 team will evaluate their options for the 22 car in the future, where Busch will seek new opportunities with another race team. And this is what Penske had to say. I appreciate the victories that Kurt has brought Penske Racing and our sponsors over the past 6 years. While I'm disappointed that Kurt will not be racing for our team in the future, both Kurt and I felt that separating at this time was best for all parties, including sponsors and our team. I wish Kurt the best in his future racing endeavors. How insincere is that, right? And we're going to future endeavor your sorry ass. And this is what Kurt had to say in reference to that quote from Penske. I am grateful to Penske Racing for 6 productive years. Leaving a great organization and a lucrative contract is not easy, but it's important. It's an important step for me to take. A deep breath to work things that I can make me a better driver and a better person. So at that point, also Reagan was said to be rumored for the 51 car, but will sign a 1-year deal with Penske. That turned out to be false, did not happen. Penske was out of the country at the time of Kurt's release, but Bud Denker, Senior Vice President for Penske Racing Corporation, for the Penske Corporation, not just the racing operation, said that the split was best for all parties. Kurt had some issues with our performance. Obviously, we had concerns with his on and off the track behavior. We agreed to take the high road for both of us. And Denker said that Shell Pennzoil was consulted in the decision, but ultimately was Penske's decision. It is important for people to understand the nature of what we have done, and it was a mutual separation. Kurt came to the conclusion, and we have as well, that it's time to move on. As we look at 2012 and beyond, it was time to move on. Based on the incident at Homestead. So they're saying they're basing this all on the incident at Homestead. So that's why I don't think this is a real... Maybe it was mutual. I don't know. But if you look at the facts here, if that video doesn't see the light of day, do they move on? Does this team regroup? Does this kind of make them the building blocks to make this team stronger? Was Kurt that disenchanted with the equipment at Penske? But I guess if you win a race at Dover, a critical race in the stretch, because the playoffs were so different back then. You weren't, how we have the rounds now. You win, you're into the next round. Kurt was third in the standings, very much in the championship fight. So the performance really wasn't that off from what he was doing with the 2 car. This could have even been an upgrade from the 2 car, because for a little period after that, okay, the 2 car did win the title in 2012, but if you go past that, the 22 car has outrun the 2 for most of the last 5 to 6 years, 8 years. I'm not sure about that. Shell Penske signed up for 2011 and beyond to work with a championship caliber driver, and that's what they were promised. That's why the move happened from the 2 to the 22 for Kurt. Denker said of Busch's replacement may not be a championship driver right away, but said Shell is behind anybody they choose. So interesting enough, it works out for Shell and Pennzoil, the sponsor. They get their championship driver in the future with Joey Logano, but acknowledging that the replacement, and it's just done at a time where most drivers have their plans lined up for next season. So for them to acknowledge the fact that they will have a David Reagan or a David Rudiman, was going to be a year of frustration that maybe Kurt Busch still was the best driver for this car. So on December 6, 2011, Penske Racing President Comments on Busch's departure. Penske Racing has stood by Kurt Busch despite an array of emotional outbursts in recent years. And Busch didn't think Penske was improving its performance as he finished outside of the top 10 in points 3 of the last 4 years. So you look at his career at Roush Fenway from 2000 to 2005. He's got 14 wins, 43 top 5s, 79 top 10s, won the championship in 2004, finished in the top 10 in three times. So Penske, you fast forward to 06, 2011, 10 wins. So you got more wins at Roush. Top 5s, 2 more only at Penske, 45, and then 90. So great deal more in the top 10 department, but top 10s are, again, they are a big deal, but they're not that big a deal in NASCAR. And Penske only had 2 top 10 point finishes in those 6 years. So and all in all, I'll say it was disappointing, I think. Kurt Busch probably had a lot of expectations. The 2-car had been one of the premier cars in NASCAR for many years with Rusty Wallace. So for Kurt to come into this and maybe didn't quite get the payoff that he thought, that he anticipated when he decided to leave Roush Fenway, or leave Roush at the time for Penske. And it meant it was time for both sides to move on. Penske president Tim Cindric, which is Austin Cindric's father, if you don't know that already. A lot of things that we've gone through weren't new discussions. Cindric, the team president, was well aware of Kurt Busch and his dissatisfaction really with the team. But they met and they set what they set out to do. They didn't really meet their expectations or the progress that they both hoped for when they signed on. It was reported on December 14, 2011, that Richard Petty Motorsports was considering Kurt Busch in an effort to retain sponsor Best Buy, and RPM had proposed replacing A.J. Allmendinger as the driver of the 43 car, and RPM struggled to sign Best Buy to a 1-year deal until early January of the previous year. Before getting that deal done for 1 year, Best Buy served as the primary sponsor for 26 races for the 43 car in 2011. Again, A.J. Allmendinger in the equation again with Kurt. It seemed like they were paralleling one another, or just seemed to be very linked to one another this time. Best Buy would end up signing with Roush Fenway Racing, not RPM, and RPM expanded to 2 teams with Eric Almirola and Marcos Ambrose, and A.J. Allmendinger would get the Penske ride. RPM, and actually, funny, Matt Kenseth would win the Daytona 500 in 2012 with Best Buy. So Best Buy got a good end of the deal too. Richard Petty Motorsports Chief Operations Officer Robbie Loomis went on to Dave Moody's SiriusXM radio program at the time and said that they were interested in signing Kurt Busch, and that he would even mortgage his house to bring Kurt Busch to RPM. I don't know. This is just, again, a weak attempt, I think, for a team that was floundering to remain relevant and had lost Casey Kane just 2 years prior to keep themselves in a position to be competitive. But the hurdle to that was, at the time, RPM got their cars from Roush Fenway, and Roush would not allow that to happen. I'm not sure if that's true or not, how Kurt Busch and Jack Roush ended their relationship, if they were still on good terms or not. Best Buy, I guess, then wouldn't want to do business with Kurt Busch. That's what was reported. Coming off as off his high-profile release at Penske. The driver has credentials, as we all know, but Best Buy wasn't interested. This could have really made, I think, it could have went one of 2 ways, right? Like anything else. This could have been a good deal for RPM, brought them back to relevancy, or this could have been a sign of desperation for Petty. It's what it was. It was a sign of desperation. That's all it was. Pure and simple. And it could have gone the other way. Had Kurt signed here, it could have been curtains for his career much sooner. December 22nd, 2011, Kurt said that he could run Kyle's nationwide car. The Xfinity Series was known as the Nationwide Series at the time. Word is Kurt has decided to decline RPM's offer to drive the 43 car, and could work with brother Kyle in the Nationwide Series and compete for the championship or run part-time. So that was an interesting. Had he gone back to the Nationwide Series, ran the full year for Kyle, would have likely accumulated a lot of wins, been in the run for the championship. He would have easily attracted another offer in Cup rather quickly. 2012, Busch would end up running 15 nationwide races in 2011 and actually winning a race for eventual employer James Finch at Daytona in July, and the spring race at Richmond for Busch Motorsports. And that was the final win for James Finch in the Xfinity Series, that win for Kurt Busch. So, again, it was, as much as people want to say that Kurt Busch in Phoenix was just a placeholder, he ended up winning a race there. Even if it was in the Xfinity Series, again, this guy could race anything and make it look good. December 23rd, 2011. Just give me 1 second here. I'm going to take a drink. Kurt gets a ride for 2012. Kurt Busch has announced that Kurt Busch will drive the 51 Chevy for Phoenix Racing in 2012. Busch put a handshake deal together with James Finch on Wednesday night. Felix Sabates is said to have encouraged Finch to hire him, as he is close friends with Kurt Busch. And the decision to hire Busch comes weeks after Busch left the 22 Penske Racing team in a mutual parting of ways. Upon his departure, Busch said he wanted to make racing fun again. Isn't that a great hat idea? And then cocksucker Donald Trump and his famous "Make America Great Again." You're a disgraced piece of shit. Remember who America is, my people's land. So Donald Trump, you did not make America great again. You could barely you're just yeah. Don't even know what to say about that individual, but like I said, pimple on society's ass is what that piece of shit is. He would finish. Finch runs Hendrick Motorsports cars and engines. Finch was focused on a winning driver for his small team. And then this is again where the conspiracy theorists come in, saying that this is a ploy by Hendrick Motorsports to get Kurt Busch in their car without actually saying Kurt Busch is driving their car. He's driving their equipment, but not exactly his car. Again, because at that time, NASCAR mandated that you can only run 4 cars instead of 5. What a weak-ass attempt. There's always been that relationship with Finch and Hendrick. This is prior to Kurt Busch ever coming into the picture. So prior to hiring Busch, the team had only one win in Cup. That was with Brad Keselowski, another Penske guy in 2009, former teammate of Busch's. And that 2009 was the win at Talladega in the spring. Everybody remembers the flip on Carl Edwards. And the team started running Cup Series in 1990. Phoenix Racing's general manager, Steve Barkdahl, said that Busch has a 1-year deal to drive the 51 car, and Barkdahl agreed that Finch won't tolerate Busch's behavior, adding the deal will be good for both sides, and Busch would ultimately use the ride with Phoenix to earn back the respect of his contemporaries and to get another ride in the future. On January 13th, 2012, Richard Petty said that sponsors did not want Kurt Busch to drive the 43 car. Smithfield was not interested in Busch for his recent actions, and that was what led to Best Buy pulling completely out of Richard Petty Motorsports. So this is where I have a problem. I think Richard Petty Motorsports, again, stuff like this infuriates me, because Richard Petty took that opportunity to throw shade at Busch to say the reason why you lost Best Buy as your sponsor was because Robbie Loomis would give anything to have Kurt in the car. So use that as an excuse. And Smithfield would have loved to have Kurt. Richard Petty Motorsports would have loved to have Kurt Busch in that 43 car. So on January 14, 2012, Kurt retorts. Kurt commented on Richard Petty's comments. It was weird to hear this comment yesterday because he was ready to throw me in the car. But the contracts did not align where they were and I wanted to be. And so I talked to James Finch. Finch made it happen. So Kurt pretty much says, Richard Petty, cut the bullshit. The sponsors, you lost them because nobody was interested in sponsored car that ran back of the pack every fucking week. And Busch also commented that he had discussions with Richard Childress Racing, Michael Waltrip Racing about 2012. Also, Front Row Motorsports was in the mix. And RCR had Jeff Burton, Kevin Harvick, and Paul Menard at the time in their stable. Burton and Busch were teammates at Roush, and Michael Waltrip Racing had Mark Martin, Martin Truex Jr., Clint Boyer in the fold at the time, and Busch and had been teammates with Mark Martin at Roush Fenway. And in 2012 was a huge year for Boyer. He finished second in the points, 3 wins. So how do you add Kurt to the mix there? How good could have Michael Waltrip Racing been? And RCR with a guy like Kurt Busch at the wheel. But on January 18, 2012, Busch said he will run for the Cup Championship despite reports that he would compete for the nationwide title for Kyle Busch Motorsports. And on January the 19th, 2012, Monster Energy signs with Kyle Busch Motorsports. KBM has signed a multi-year agreement with Monster Energy as a primary sponsor of the team's 54 Camry in the Nationwide Series. Monster will sponsor Busch and their efforts in 2012. So it's funny about the relationship and how good Kurt Busch is and the equity he has still in NASCAR, and how no matter what happened at Penske, there's two sides to every story, how sponsors seem to still want to do business with him. Monster's still with Kurt Busch, and they're going to be with him at 2311. They were with him at Ganassi. They were with him at his stint with Furniture Row and with Stewart-Haas Racing. So for a guy that nobody wanted, that was the redheaded stepchild of the industry at that point, doesn't quite look like that to me. So 2012, we'll fast forward ahead as we complete this story. Phoenix Racing, Kurt's record was respectable, competed in 30 events for the 51 team, a best finish of third at Sonoma in June. And think about this for a minute. I know Finch had good cars at Daytona, Talladega, Mike Wallace, Jeffrey Bodine, numerous other drivers who were coming on the back nine of their career, ran really well in that equipment. So for Kurt to take that car on a road course, a demanding track like Sonoma, and put that 51 car right in the thick of it and nearly win it, the team's first top 5 since Keselowski's win at Talladega in April of 2009, would be the 4th and final top 5 in the team's history. So just to say that equipment, that would be equivalent to like Kurt taking Rick Ware Racing's car today and putting that in the top 5. So we often forget how talented that Kurt Busch is, and he's often, like I said, glossed over as one of the all-time greats, Hall of Fame driver, but I think we just forget how good Kurt is, and Kurt is the only driver to put a Phoenix Racing car in the top 5 outside of the super speedway tracks, as I mentioned, Daytona, Talladega. Kurt Busch would finish out the year 2012 with Furniture Row Racing in a Chevrolet. 6 races for them, and would finish top 10 in 3 of those 6 races, and would drive that car in 2013 before signing on with Stewart-Haas Racing in 2014. And he would get back to the winner's circle with Stewart-Haas Racing in the spring of 2014. But Kurt Busch also, you could see, was the catalyst for Furniture Row becoming a major player in the industry, winning a championship with Martin Truex Jr. in 2017. So I think that's what we often, Regan Smith did get the Southern 500 win, was released, but it was Kurt Busch who ended up getting himself and Furniture Racing moving in the right direction. A lot to be said of Kurt Busch. Phenomenal driver. I can't wait to see what he's going to do at 2311. I figure he's going to win. He's going to be in the playoffs, and he's going to make that organization just so much better as he'll be working with Billy Scott, a guy that he had a lot of history with Stewart-Haas Racing, and has gotten himself to the winner's circle with, and his time with Stewart-Haas Racing. So that's going to wrap up Kurt Busch getting the pink slip, getting the future endeavors from Penske Racing. I think both organizations, both parties, let's just say in this instance, are better for it. It put James Finch on the map for a bit there in 2012, made it interesting, handshake deal, and he still, even though he had some tense moments in that car too. I guess he berated the crew a couple times while he was in that car, but nothing to the extent of what he did with Dr. Jerry Punch, and another footnote in history. But it was fun to see Kurt Busch, again, the rise of the Phoenix, rise up from the ashes, get himself a good deal, and it all worked out for all the parties involved. So that's going to do it for this week on Watching, Winning, and Wrecking. Come back next week for another trip back in the Wayback Machine. Not sure what we're going to cover yet, but I got a couple ideas in mind. Maybe Casey Kane, maybe Danica Patrick in NASCAR. Maybe we'll talk about Stewart-Haas Racing. Tony Stewart buying into Gene Haas's team in 2009 and making that really one of the most decorated teams in the Cup Series at this time. So I will wish everyone a very good evening. I hope everyone has a nice weekend and spend some quality time with their family in the next coming weeks. That's what the holiday season is all about. It's not about how much you give. It's how much you get. It's about how much you give, and that doesn't even necessarily mean have to be monetary value. Just give your time. Tell those you love them. Tell those closest to you that you love them and that you appreciate them, because you never know when it's the final act and the checkered flag could wave on your life. And that's why you got to seize the day and be a true champion and do everything in life with conviction. And until next time, it's hey, it's Christopher, and I will see you later.